Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Concordia Language Village's informational webinar on our high school credit abroad program. My name is Kenji, and I'm one of the group directors with Concordia Language Villages, and we appreciate you joining us for this webinar, along with my colleagues who I'll introduce in just a moment, and our partners at Experitas. Before we get much further this evening, I'd like to introduce you to our high school credit program. Our program is for high school age students in 14 world languages who earn 1 year of high school credit in 1 month in any of 14 languages, as you can see here on the screen. Our programs are located in northern Minnesota. And then for 3 of our languages, French, German, and Spanish, we also offer another option, which is 2 weeks in northern Minnesota and 2 weeks either in Costa Rica, France, or Germany. And that's the program that we'll be focusing on this evening, our high school credit abroad program. Joining us this evening are my colleagues, Thérèse, who is the program leader for our French program and a staff member at Lac du Bois, the French language village, Johanna, who is the program leader for Germany and a staff member at Valse, our German language village, Rachel from our partners at Experitas, and Charlotte, who is a fellow group director here with Concordia Language Village. And at this moment, I'll turn things over to Charlotte.
Thank you and welcome. So today we'd like to give you an in-depth picture of this really unique credit abroad program. Students spend 2 weeks in Minnesota in the language village, as Kenji mentioned, and then go abroad for 2 weeks with their teachers for 1 week of family stay experience and 1 week of travel and excursions. Their teachers go with them and teach the course throughout the 2 weeks and lead students in their language and cross-cultural learning experience. And as we have 2 types of language courses, you might be wondering who is well suited to benefit from the credit abroad experience. So he's showing you now our credit abroad page on our website that has a lot of information on it for you. We offer all levels of language learning in the regular credit programs from beginner to advanced. So students come to us with a wide range of language study backgrounds, and they're able to take their skills to a higher level of proficiency in just that 1 month. But the credit abroad program is intended for a more advanced student. Students ages 16 to 18 who've had at least 1 year of high school language study are eligible for the program. In the application process, students need to submit their high school transcript and a letter of recommendation from a language teacher. And then they go through an interview with our program leaders. So we're looking for students who are eager to put their language study knowledge to use. In the village, at first, during those first 2 weeks, with their peer students and with their host families abroad. And we expect students to take on this challenge with a bit of enthusiasm and commitment. So we're really looking for the student who wants this fun challenge and has the basic language skills to take it on. And so I'll ask the next question to Johanna. What can students and their families expect from a CLV credit abroad experience?
Hello, everyone. So the credit program for abroad is very similar to the credit program that we offer on site. It is portfolio and project-based. We do a lot of team learning, of group work, and it's all focused on what the villagers are experiencing in their day-to-day lives. So while we're on site, we're learning about the routines and the activities that are offered in the village. And while we're traveling, that learning is very focused on the sites that we'll be seeing and the experiences that they have with their host family. When the CLV Abroad program starts on site, the villagers are in this wonderful environment where they have all this support from CLV staff members, and they're learning. There's counselors all around to ask questions. There's this grand simulation of a bank and a store and all the meals that are authentic too. So it's this very wonderful controlled environment. And then when we go abroad, it's a transition for them to a little bit more independence, where they're interacting with native speakers who maybe aren't aware that they're language learners, and they get to test out their knowledge in real life situations. So that's lots of fun.
Great, thanks, Johanna.
Yeah.
I'll ask the next couple of questions regarding logistics to Rachel. I'm sorry, was someone going to add something? Okay, so we have a few questions around the logistics piece, and we have Rachel from our partners at Experitas to help us with some information on that front. So what about logistics? Who makes the flight arrangements? What about health insurance? And also, how do families keep in touch with their students while they're in the program?
Hello, yes. So Experitas and CLV have been partnering. This is the second year that we're putting this program together. And so Experitas is here for all of the logistical preparations. And yeah, AIR is a big part of that. So we also have kind of a travel agent status, which means that it's easier for us to organize group travel. And we do have an AIR contract for groups that CLV will be taking to the 3 separate destinations. And we also provide health insurance to all of our travelers. We work with an outside company called Core Travel Insurance, and that provides coverage for minor illness and accidents abroad, as well as evacuation in case of an emergency. It's really great insurance. We've seen it put into play in really well when it has to. Hopefully you won't have to see it in play, but it does cover everything that you would hope it to cover in terms of minor illness, accidents, and then the evacuation. So obviously there's more detailed information to be given. If ever anybody is interested in that, they can find that on our website, experitas.org. That's Experitas starting with an X. So you can search for insurance, and there's lots more details if that is of interest to you. But basically, each participant has their own card, their own insurance card that is made available to them before departure. So I think it'll probably work best if CLV, because they'll be at camp right before the trip, they can all print them all together at CLV, and then they have to carry that around with them during the trip at all times. And the most important thing to remember about the insurance is that you need that card to pay, to show when you need it, and then you need to pay yourself on site, not have the teacher pay or the host family pay, for example. Everything is covered. You just have to get the clinic or hospital or whatever in touch with the insurance, and then it gets kind of put into play. It's up to $50,000 coverage. There is other coverage available if someone wanted to extend that, and the deductible is $50. So if it's under $50, you just pay for that on site, which actually covers a lot in some of these destinations that have really good healthcare. And then the other question you had was, how do families keep in touch with their students while in the program? And to that, I would say it's not so much a question of how to keep in touch, because our kids these days, they find the Wi-Fi, no matter where it is, they find a way to be in touch. They're used to being in touch with everybody via texting and social media. There's lots of outlets while abroad. But I would say it's more of a question of how you as a parent and the student, how you are going to avoid being in constant contact and challenging yourselves to let the true immersion happen, because that won't happen if we're in constant contact with each other. So in terms of how, yes, there will most likely be Wi-Fi. Parents can check with their cell phone providers to see if they, want some sort of plan. It's nice to have that in case of an emergency, but this is a huge investment. And, you could just sit home and look at pictures of these destinations. But if you're going to pay to do this program and have that immersion experience, then it's worth it to just disconnect and allow that to happen. Also, homesickness becomes a lot worse if, you know, the kid is in constant contact with parents. And I would say that if something were to happen, the student's best outlet is going to be the teachers that are there. So empower your kids to trust their leaders and to be in touch with them if something happens, because they're the ones that can help in that situation. Also, there is a 24-hour emergency line directly to Xperitas in terms of logistical, and Xperitas and the CLV leaders are in constant contact and always working to make sure that everybody is safe. So I think that pretty much answers the question. Also, if you want to, I think the CLV leaders organize some sort of blog, right, to keep so the parents can kind of watch the group as a whole and get updates that way. Is that right?
Yep.
Awesome.
Yeah, we posted to the blog. This is Therese. We posted to the blog. We tried to post every day. We were not 100% successful, but we did post a lot of pictures, a lot of information about what's going on. We were even on Snapchat for a day, which was a very exciting experience for us old fogies. But yeah, so we are trying to keep in touch to keep parents informed. And just jump off what Rachel said, I think something that shocked me that a bunch of our participants brought up halfway through the time in France was how much they were struggling with kind of balancing their tech usage and their desire to be connected with friends and family at home with the importance of being really fully in the moment. And that was something that I was very impressed with them for bringing it up on their own. But that I think after being on site with very minimal, tech access, they appreciated, they saw that was something that let them be a little bit more in the moment and let them put some worries and some concerns to the side in a way that is harder to make happen when you're in a foreign country, but is, I think, still very valuable.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you, Rachel, for the information on logistics, and Therese for the comments on students' opinions about phone usage. We're going to back up a bit and go into depth about what this month really looks like. When we said it begins with 2 weeks in the Minnesota Concordia Language Village. So I'm going to ask Therese to speak to that, and then we'll also tell you a little bit more about those 2 weeks abroad and how you manage to continue to study when you're abroad. So Therese, what is the time in the Minnesota Village like?
So yeah, thank you. It's, if you're familiar with the 2-week or the traditional residential 4-week credit session, it's kind of a hybrid thing. It's part summer camp, but for the credit program, it's part intense classroom experience. And in a lot of ways, the village life is a simulation of what our students can expect to encounter in Europe, because we try to give them opportunities to practice scenarios that they're going to encounter in the host country. So they go to the bank, they go to the shops, they go to a restaurant. We have a mock movie theater, but at the same time, they're doing all of this with our CLV staff who are trained in how to be sympathetic listeners and kind of the ideal conversational partner who's not in a bad mood, who's not stressed out, who's willing to coach you through some of the vocab that you don't know yet. And so they're able to give a lot of support and guidance as they work to our villagers as they work their way through the situation. So, in a lot of ways, it's very similar to a summer camp. In a lot of ways, it's kind of like being dropped into a small town in whatever your target language country would be. But then in the credit program, it's also just, a very intense classroom experience. We have 3 or 4 days of direct language instruction, 3 or 4 hours, a day of direct language instruction in French, and, building the grammar and the vocabulary. And what's so great about that is that then, they can turn around for our kids, they can use those structures, that vocabulary, that grammar in a conversation at the lunch table. And they can go, and we can talk about, telling stories and past narratives in class, and then go have an evening program activity on fairy tales and relating a narrative that's maybe from Louisiana, from French-speaking Louisiana. And so it's, as a teacher, I love it because it's pairing this, really intense language instruction with a place where you get to take everything that you've learned in class and practice it in a real situation right away. And while surrounded by, truly kind, caring people who are willing to be patient and take the time to let you figure out how to say what you're trying to say, and in a community of people who are similarly really invested. So it's a very intense experience, but I think it's a really powerful one. And we try specifically with the Credit Abroad program to make the 2 weeks that we have on site kind of a preparation for what we're going to be doing abroad and how we're going to be handling and that, what we need to know, and what situations we need to prepare ourselves for. I don't know if Joanna wants to add in on that.
Well, that sounds good. And then when the 2 weeks are over in the village, as we said, we all travel down to Minneapolis together to get the plane abroad. And then some pretty exciting things happen. So Johanna, what is that time abroad like? And what are some highlights that you can recall from last year?
Yeah, the time abroad is really fantastic, just like the time on site. It kind of splits easily into 2 chunks. Part of the time abroad a week is a family stay where each student is going to be living with a host family. While they're in that week with the host family, we're still meeting as a group regularly for class and excursions in that area. We try and give them the weekend with the host family kind of uninterrupted so that they can really be present in that experience even more. But as they're in the credit program, they're going to be working on kind of documenting the conversations they're having with the family and the experiences through that weekend, because that also counts towards our credit hours. The week when they're not with their host families, we're going to be doing some traveling and sightseeing. We eat all our meals together as a group, and that's a really important time for us to connect and talk about what has just happened and what's going to happen next. And we have a mix of class time along with that sightseeing so that they have time to work on their portfolio, but we're also getting to see some really amazing things and do some really awesome experiences too. We try and find a lot of hands-on learning so they're not just looking at these amazing things that are available. Some of the highlights from last year, on the German trip, the students, well, the biggest highlight for most of them was the host family stay. That was the part of the experience that made the biggest impression on them, and they felt was the most powerful by far. But other than that, just the group bonding that went on, it's a smallish group, and so you really get to know each other well, and you have a lot of inside jokes and things that help the group come together. And they also really loved the sites that we saw in Berlin that we'll be going to again this year. A little bit different itinerary in Berlin, but still hitting that capital city and seeing some of those sites.
Mm-hmm. Great.
Thanks, Johanna.
Yeah.
Johanna a moment ago mentioned the impact and the value of staying with the host family. So we'd like to highlight that a little bit. And I'm going to ask this next question to Perez to weigh in. Perez, from your experience last year, what's it like for a villager to live with a host family?
Yeah, all of our host family, I think like Johanna said, it's a really powerful experience that I think for all of our kids, we were very lucky last year because we did some traveling. We actually had 2 different host family stays. And for both of them, our kids were just really blown away by how much how important that moment, what that time was. So all of our host families are incredibly enthusiastic about hosting the CLV villagers. They were very generous with their time. They took kids all around the region. They had these very elaborate excursion plans. You know, whether that's going to see a castle, whether that's going to maybe visit a music festival, whether that's going to see, you know, a theme park. They really went all out to show our kids the region in a way that was very, very generous. But also just, I mean, I think I can't overstate how important it is to have that real connection with somebody who, you know, for some of them don't necessarily speak that much English. And so it really puts a point on, you know, yeah, no, I do have to try this in French. And I can't just switch back into English because Therese will understand me no matter what I speak. And so I think that, you know, the stakes are higher because you do need to actually, you know, there's more of a risk of a real communication breakdown. But you know, by and large, these are very generous, very welcoming people who really wanted the opportunity to share some of the special things about their region with our kids, and who were also very interested in getting to know these young Americans. I think that a lot of our kids had very, very long and very involved conversations about kind of different cultural norms and the ways that they had grown up and the things that they had thought would be true about France and the things that they discovered about France. And they had, you know, very, very real conversations about a whole range of subjects, where, you know, they got to be the expert on some subjects and they got to discover some firsthand things on other subjects. So yeah, I mean, we had all different family configurations. We had, you know, parents with very young children, parents with older children. We had single parents, you know, married couples, some step families, English, but across the board, you know, really caring, warm, welcoming people who, you know, I mean, and it's a difficult, awkward experience to go stay with a complete stranger for a week. But across the board, all of our participants said, you know, this was a really wonderful experience, and I know that many of them have kept in contact with their host families since they left, which is really cool.
I'm going to jump in really quickly. This is Rachel again from Experitas, and I think, Therese, you gave such an amazing summary of the experience. I just wanted to add that all of the families are volunteers, and so that's one of the reasons that, you know, people are genuinely interested in having that intercultural connection. And then also, you know, even though they're volunteers, so we don't pay them any money to take the kids all around. So they're in no way required to take the villagers around to different excursions and things like that, but they love to show their region. So even though it might not be the same exact thing, everybody can count on an experience of true immersion with, you know, a family that genuinely wants to be with them.
Absolutely. And we had we had people who were going to the seaside, people who were going to a local farm because somebody's cousin owned a farm, and so they got to go and pet the cows, and like that was really exciting. I might have gone to pet the cows too. That might also have been really exciting. You know, but it was across the board. Yeah, the generosity of time and of care was really mind-blowing.
Mm-hmm. I know too that Rachel works really closely, our Experitas partners work really closely with our in-country coordinators, who then also greet and host the teachers and students when they arrive and get them to their host families. So they're close by and they know these host families well. And Rachel, I'm wondering if you could speak to our interested families about this process of considering an experience abroad. You've been working with Experitas for years, and you've taken groups to Europe yourself many, many times. But what's one piece of advice you have for students and families considering this abroad experience?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, travel is just such a hot thing right now. You know, if you look anywhere on the internet, there's like the top 10 tips and tricks of travel and what to pack, and it's really easy to get all wrapped up in that, and you start imagining what it's all going to be like. But I think the most important thing to consider when, you know, before you travel is having an open mind and making sure that, you know, of course you're going to have kind of some expectations of what it might be like, but just really tempering your expectations so that you are open to accepting whatever you come into contact with once you're in that destination, because you can't imagine what it's really going to be like. So if you're considering this program, it's really because you and your child place an emphasis on the profound educational experience that comes with this type of immersion program. And, you know, this incredible learning occurs when discomfort occurs, right? Because that's when you're stepping out of your comfort zone and you're learning something new. So when the villagers feel discomfort that comes with culture shock, or, you know, the hiccups that sometimes occur while you're traveling, there's so many things that come into play, then that means that they're learning to adapt to these different situations. Even if, you know, a negative, you know, a small hiccup or something occurs, that's a learning experience as well. And keeping an open mind and a positive attitude really makes all the difference.
Yes, thank you. And truly what's unique about this program is students get to know each other and the Language Village's staff before they go, because you've had so much fun in camp together, and then you get to travel together. So it's really unique.
Yeah, it's really a unique experience, that's well said. So I'd like to ask Johanna and Therese, our program leaders, what their former participants this past summer said about the program, and perhaps share some insights about their experiences through what they heard.
Okay, so I'll jump in. So the participants that we had last year were an incredible group. They were so positive, and they really, I don't think they complained once for the whole 4 weeks we're together, which is quite amazing. But they had a really good time. I asked them specifically afterwards, you know, what their favorite things were and what was hard, and the family stay was by far the highlight. Like we mentioned before, that was a really big deal for all the kids, even though they were very nervous. They were probably the most nervous about that going into it. A lot of the participants we had in our group had experienced traveling before, but the family stay was a new thing for them. So they were nervous about it, but it ended up being the most rewarding part for them, I think. I asked them about the balance between the credit program and traveling at the same time. And they thought that it was a really good mix of having enough time to work on the things you need to do to earn credit, but also not feeling like you're missing out on all the wonderful things there are to do around you while you're in Bemidji and while you're abroad. Yeah, so I think that was the main feedback that I got from our group. Therese, what would you like to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd second all of those things, that, you know, that it's a very, that the family stay was incredibly important to all of our kids. I think we had a really interesting spread of people who, we had a couple of participants who had a very, very advanced level of French, and a couple of participants who were really just barely past French 1 in some cases. And I think all of them at the end said, you know, I've learned a tremendous amount more than I even imagined that I would. And that's definitely what I saw with all of them, that, you know, I saw them not just, you know, progress in terms of language, but in terms of their comfort in handling new situations. And one of the things that's so great about the family stay is just the level, the feeling of accomplishment that the kids had from that, of, you know, I was able to have this conversation with somebody about that was not scripted, that was not staged, that was just me interacting with a real person and making that very human connection. I mean, yeah, it's a very intense program. It's a very, I think they also said they were ready to go home and sleep for a week, as was I. But it was a very, very positive experience, I think, across the board.
Okay.
Wonderful, thank you.
So you've heard lots of information and insight about this Credit Abroad program, this month-long program of 2 weeks of immersion study in northern Minnesota and 2 weeks going abroad with your teachers. I want you to feel assured that we have very helpful documents on our website that spell out the steps for applying. So we're going to look at how you can find out more information, how you can contact us and begin the application process. So Kenji's going to show us, we're looking right here. So you see this request more information. You click this button and that allows you to give us your name and number, contact info, and any questions you have. And then we'll be able to send you more information. And part of the application process for you, we have a list, a checklist of things that you have to go through, because you've heard lots of things tonight about the fact that you fill in your application, you need to send us a transcript and a teacher recommendation, and then we contact you and schedule a phone or Skype interview with our program leader of the program you're applying to. But here on our website, you can access the registration process. You see the register button, you'll click on that, and it'll help you begin that process. At any time, we'll give you the information to contact us directly. At any time, you can ask questions and ask for clarity on any material that we do have on our website. So now's the time for some questions and answers. I haven't seen one come in, but we do have one that many of you might be wondering, and that is, how can you get the credit at the end of the month of this course? How do you get credit back in your school after the program finishes? Would one of our leaders like to answer that?
Sure. So we, Concordia College, are accredited ourselves, so we can grant credit, and you will get an official transcript from us. So when you're done with the program, you can take that document as well as your portfolio, which you've worked so hard on, into your school office and show that to them. And then it's just a matter of having your school acknowledge that credit and maybe add it to your home transcript if you would like to have that done. But when you're applying to further educational opportunities or resumes, this is something that you can list as its own separate thing as well. So
There we go.
Well, thank you everyone for joining us this evening. And just a reminder that our high school credit abroad programs do have a deadline for completing the application and interview process, and that is March 1st. Although we certainly encourage you to begin the application process by January 31st. And for those of you who are hearing this webinar before January 15th, we invite you to register by January 15th and have your name entered in our early bird registration drawing, and you can win one of 5 $1,000 partial tuition vouchers towards your program this summer. So that's great if you register by January 15th. You have a couple of spots here where you can request more information. You can also always check out more information at concordialanguagevillages.org. And you can send us an email at clv@ford.edu. So with that, I'd like to thank my colleagues for joining us this evening and providing valuable insight into our high school credit abroad program, and to those who are listening for your interest, in Concordia Language Villages and Experitas High School Credit Abroad program. Thanks everyone, have a good evening. Bye-bye.